I'm not even gonna pretend I'm okay right now. I just saw a photo. One fucking photo. And everything inside me cracked. He's in Cabo, on a boat, arm around some girl I've never seen before, matching swimsuits, big fake smiles, cocktail in hand like he's never cried, like he didn't just ask me for space 3 weeks ago while standing in my living room with that quiet, tired voice menus when they've already left you, but don't have the balls to say it out loud. He said he was overwhelmed, that he needed time to process everything, that he still loved me, but didn't want to mess things up by rushing into something he wasn't ready for. It was such a calm, sad boy monologue, like he was doing me a favor by disappearing. And like an idiot, I nodded. I said, "Take what you need." I gave him space. I respected it. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't beg or spiral. Because I thought it was love needing a breather, not love getting packed into a suitcase and flown to Cabo. I'm Jess. I'm 28. And until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a boyfriend. A man, a grown-ass adult who looked me in the eyes and said I was his future. He used those words, "I see a future with you." He told me I was the calm in his chaos, the only person who made sense in a world that didn't. He cried when he met my mom. He made pasta from scratch on my birthday. He made promises, so many fucking promises. So when he said he needed space, I believed it was about him trying to save us, not prep the stage for someone new. The Cabo picture was a friend of a friend's story. You know how it is. Instagram's little algorithm of betrayal. I didn't even follow him anymore, but a girl I used to work with reposted something, and there he was, grinning like a vacation brochure, hand on a hip that wasn't mine, and my whole chest caved in. Not just because he moved on, not just because I was blindsided, but because I kept protecting him. Even after he left, I told people he just needed time. I told myself he was hurting, confused, still figuring things out. Turns out, he was just fucking someone else. Turns out space was a euphemism for, I met someone and I don't have the spine to break up with you clean. And I hate that I still looked at that photo and thought, maybe this means nothing. Like I'm still giving him the benefit of the doubt while I'm the one sobbing into a pillow that still smells like him. But before you judge me, just stop. Because I know how this sounds. I know how I sound. Like another girl who got too attached, who ignored the signs, who caught feelings harder than he did and couldn't let go. But that's not what happened. I didn't fall in love with a stranger. I fell in love with someone who told me, repeatedly, that he was in it for the long haul. He said I was the safest space he'd ever known, that I made the noise in his head quiet down, that I was everything he didn't know he needed. He said that. Not me. So when he told me he needed space, I didn't take it as a breakup. I took it as a man being honest about his emotional bandwidth. I thought maybe he was overwhelmed or scared of how serious this had gotten. And honestly, I respected that. I wanted to give him room to breathe, because that's what you do when you care about someone. I didn't chase him. I didn't blow up his phone. I didn't even ask for a timeline, even though every part of me was screaming, how long is space supposed to last before it turns into absence? Instead, I trusted him. And now I feel like the biggest fool in the world, because while I was giving him time to figure things out, he was boarding a fucking plane to Cabo with a girl who clearly didn't need to be waited on. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how fast it all flipped. 3 weeks ago, we were eating Thai food on my couch, arguing about which movie to stream, laughing about how bad his taste in 2000s rom-coms was. Now he's sipping mimosas with someone else, like we never happened. And yes, I know what you're probably thinking. Were there signs? Were there red flags? Sure, probably. But when you're in it, like really in it, you don't call them red flags, you call them off days. You tell yourself he's tired, stressed. You make excuses because the alternative, that he's lying, that he's halfway out the door, is too devastating to sit with. And he was good. He was really, really good at saying all the right things while quietly rewriting the story in his head. So that when he finally left, he could tell himself he'd been honest, that I knew, that I understood. But I didn't. Because if I did, I wouldn't be sitting here on the edge of my bed, staring at his name on my screen like it might suddenly text back. If I understood, I wouldn't still be hoping for an explanation that'll never come. If I understood, I wouldn't still be calling this space. Before him, I was fine. Not amazing, not broken, just fine. I had routines, I had my own apartment, I had peace, not fireworks, not chaos, just peace. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I wasn't on the apps. I was focused on work, catching up with friends, slowly piecing myself back together after a year that quietly unraveled me in 100 small ways no one really noticed. The truth is, I'd just come out of something heavy. Not dramatic, not toxic, just one of those long, slow burns that dies out quietly while you're still in the room, pretending you don't smell smoke. So when I met Matt, yeah, his name's Matt. When I met Matt, I wasn't in the mood to start again. But he was patient. He didn't come on strong or try to impress me. He just showed up, consistently. Little texts, little jokes, small ways of saying, "Hey, I see you," without demanding anything back. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue. It wasn't some movie moment. I didn't trip into his arms or lock eyes from across the lawn. We ended up next to each other while refilling drinks. Talked about how bad the music was. Laughed about the lukewarm pasta salad. It was easy. Too easy, probably. But after months of ghosting and games and emotionally constipated men who couldn't name a single feeling, Matt felt like fresh air. He didn't flinch when I got quiet. He didn't overreact when I said I needed time. He didn't press, but he didn't disappear either. We started slow. Coffee, a walk, a movie, then dinners, weekends, groceries. Somewhere between sharing Spotify playlists and folding laundry together, he just became part of my life. And not in that clingy, codependent way. In that you can breathe easier when they're around kind of way. He made space for me. Real space. Not the kind he asked for later when things got hard, but the kind you give when you care. Because you want to understand the other person even when it's inconvenient. And that's what messed me up. Because for the first time in years, I thought I'd found something real. Something worth the risk of opening up again. Something I didn't have to chase or beg for or shrink myself to keep. He remembered my work meetings. He sent voice notes when I was anxious. He bought my favorite oat milk without asking. He asked about my mom, even when she was being difficult. He didn't just like me, he saw me. Or so I thought. So no, I wasn't just some girl who got too attached too fast. I let him in because he earned it, because he said all the right things, because he stayed when others left, because he made me believe I wasn't too much. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I should have noticed he only loved me when it was easy. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing. You never wake up one morning and go, "Oh, he's going to leave me." It creeps in slowly, like fog. So quiet you don't even realize you're lost until you're halfway gone. The first sign? He stopped asking how my day was. I know how small that sounds, but when someone always asks, and then they don't, it's like a silence you can hear. At first, I chalked it up to stress. His job had picked up. He was managing a new team, long hours, more pressure. I wanted to be understanding, supportive. I told myself, this is what being in an adult relationship looks like. You show up, even when it's not all butterflies and compliments. So I overcompensated. I asked about his day more. Cooked dinner, ran errands for him, left little notes in his car, just stupid stuff like, "You've got this," or "I'm proud of you." He used to text me back the second he found them. Now, nothing. Just silence. Or worse, thanks. Like I was an assistant dropping off a spreadsheet. Then came the phone thing. He used to leave it face up on the table, volume on. Now it was always screen down, or suddenly dead. He never used to take his phone to the bathroom. Now it was glued to his hand like a lifeline. Again, I told myself, don't be that girl. Don't spiral, don't snoop, trust him. But when trust becomes a pep talk, you have to give yourself every day. That's not trust anymore. That's denial dressed up in good intentions. Still, I stayed. Still, I hoped. Because there were still moments that felt real. Like when we went to his cousin's wedding and he introduced me as the best thing that ever happened to me. Or when he held my hand the entire way through my granddad's funeral, even when mine was shaking so bad I could barely hold the tissue. It was like he'd switch between versions of himself. There was my Matt, the warm, attentive, funny guy I fell for. And then there was this other version, colder, distracted, slightly absent, like I was talking to a shadow of someone I used to know. The turning point, the moment I should have known, was my birthday. He forgot. He didn't plan anything, no dinner, no card, no mention of it until I brought it up the night before. We were lying on the couch and I said, "Hey, are we doing anything tomorrow?" And he looked at me blankly and said, "For what?" I laughed because I thought he was kidding. He wasn't. He said, "Oh shit, that's tomorrow?" And just stared at me like I'd caught him cheating on a test. I should have walked away then, but instead, I gave him grace. I said, "It's okay, I know you're stressed." I made it okay for him to forget me. That was the shift. That was the day I realized I was slowly being erased, and I was the one handing him the eraser. The breaking point wasn't loud. It wasn't some dramatic fight or screaming match in the rain. It was quiet, casual even, like betrayal disguised as normalcy. He texted me midweek, "Hey, I think I need a little space, just a few days to reset." And I remember staring at those words, thinking, reset from what? From me? But I didn't push, didn't beg, didn't say, "Are you kidding me right now?" Even though that's exactly what I should have said. Instead, I texted back, "Okay, take what you need. I'm here." Because I thought that's what love looked like, letting someone breathe, even if it meant holding your own breath while they figured it out. He went quiet after that. No calls, no check-ins, just silence. 3 days, then 5, then a full week. I sent one text, just one. "Hope you're okay. I miss you." No response. My chest ached every night, but I kept telling myself, he's just overwhelmed. He'll come back. This is temporary. It wasn't. The Cabo photo showed up on a random Tuesday, on someone's story. A girl I didn't know. They were on a boat. He had his arm around her waist like he belonged there. I don't even remember how long I stared at it. Just this still frame of him laughing, while I sat in bed trying not to spiral. I thought it was a mistake, some look-alike, a weird coincidence. But then the next photo loaded. Same girl, different bikini, different day. They weren't just on a trip. They were on a trip. The kind you plan, the kind you pack for, the kind you take with someone you want to wake up next to for multiple mornings in a row. And I realized the space wasn't to clear his head. It was to clear me out of his life without having to be the bad guy. I went numb. My whole body just stopped. No crying, no rage, just this dull, echoing silence in my chest. Like my heart was watching from somewhere far away, too tired to care anymore. I didn't text him. I didn't confront him. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of watching me beg for crumbs of truth he'd already buried in someone else's skin. But that didn't mean I let it slide. I screenshotted the photo, sent it to him. No caption. Just that. Let the silence scream louder than anything I could say. He didn't reply for 2 days. Then finally, it's not what it looks like. The audacity. I didn't even respond. Because what do you say to someone who's already chosen their lie? Who's already replaced you while you were busy believing they just needed time? He didn't want space. He wanted an exit. He just didn't have the guts to say goodbye. So he ghosted under the guise of self-care, then soft-launched his new girlfriend like I wouldn't notice. And the worst part? For a second, I still wanted him to come back, even after all that. That was the moment I knew I had to save myself. Because waiting on him to love me again was killing me. Quietly, slowly, expertly. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Not just couldn't, wouldn't. Because if I slept, I'd have to wake up. And waking up meant remembering that he lied, that I mattered less than a vacation, that I was a placeholder. I spiraled, quietly. You wouldn't have noticed unless you were looking close. I still went to work, still answered emails, but every part of me was on fire under my skin. I kept replaying everything. Every text, every dinner, every time he said, "I've never felt this safe with anyone." What did that even mean to him? Was I just practice for a girl in Cabo with a better tan and no expectations? I started doing what you're not supposed to do, checking his Spotify activity, scrolling the comments on her posts, watching his location bounce around like it had nothing to hide. I knew it was pathetic. I did it anyway. I didn't tell anyone at first, not even my best friend. Because how do you say he left me on red while he was rubbing sunscreen into another woman's shoulders? How do you say I believed him without sounding like an idiot? Eventually, I cracked. I called him. Like really called. Ringing his phone at 1 a.m., hoping maybe he'd still have some piece of a soul left and pick up. He did. His voice was groggy, like I'd interrupted something. I could practically hear her breathing in the background. He said, "Is everything okay?" I almost laughed. I said, "Are you serious right now?" He went quiet. Then, "I don't think this is the time." I cut him off. "Then when is the time, Matt? After you get back from playing house with her? After you finish pretending like I never existed?" He didn't answer. Didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. He just said, "I didn't know how to tell you." And there it was. The truth. Ugly and small and pathetic. He didn't leave because he fell in love with her. He left because he was too much of a coward to tell me he wanted out. I asked him why. Why he couldn't just say it. Why he made me feel like I was the one losing him when he'd already handed himself to someone else. His answer? "I didn't want to hurt you." Let that sink in. He didn't want to hurt me, so he lied, cheated, ghosted, hid, and then boarded a flight with another woman while I waited for a man who already chose to forget me. That's not mercy. That's manipulation with good PR. The call ended with nothing. No closure, no explanation, just another silence I didn't ask for. But this time, I didn't chase it. I didn't call back. Didn't cry into the void hoping he'd send me a voice note full of regrets and reasons. I sat there, alone. Phone screen black. Heart split open. But this time, I let it split. I didn't tape it back together for someone else's comfort, because I was done being the girl who made excuses for someone else's lack of courage. The days after the call felt like wading through wet concrete. Everything moved in slow motion. My thoughts, my limbs, even time. I'd wake up and forget for a second. Then it would slam back into me like a freight train. He left, he lied, he's gone. And not just gone like unavailable. Gone like unrecognizable, like I could pass him on the street now and not be sure if I ever really knew him. You think heartbreak will feel like fire? It doesn't. It feels like fog. Like forgetting where you put your own name. I kept catching myself writing texts I never sent, typing out paragraphs I knew he would never read. I wanted to scream. Why wasn't I enough? When did you stop choosing me? How long were you pretending? But even if he answered, I knew it wouldn't help, because his truth would still be filtered through cowardice and convenience. And I don't need more lies with a softer voice. I stopped checking his socials, not because I didn't care anymore, but because it was killing me one scroll at a time. Seeing them together, smiling, sun-kissed, soft-lit, like the last year of my life was just a warm-up act for someone else's fairy tale. People started to notice I was unraveling. My friends tiptoed around me like heartbreak was contagious. I got all the usual lines. Everything happens for a reason. Maybe this was a blessing in disguise. You'll find someone better. I didn't want someone better. I wanted the person he pretended to be. The version he sold me. The man who made coffee in the mornings, rubbed my back when I was sick, knew how I liked my pasta. Soft center, crispy edges. But that version? He was a performance. A character he played to win me. And the second the curtain fell, he left me sitting in the dark. And that, right there, was the hardest truth to swallow. It wasn't just the loss of him, it was the loss of the illusion. I had loved a fantasy, and once I saw through it, I couldn't unsee it. He didn't fall out of love. He fell out of the act. That was the realization that cracked me open in a different way. Because for so long, I'd made this about me. What I lacked. What I did wrong. How I failed to keep him. But it was never about me. It was about his inability to be real. He loved being loved. He loved being admired, adored, depended on. But the second it got inconvenient, complicated, demanding, he vanished. Because he wasn't capable of love, only performance. And me? I was just the stage. When I finally said this out loud, to myself, to my own reflection in the mirror, it didn't make the pain go away, but it made it make sense. And that's something grief doesn't always give you. Clarity. So no, I wasn't healed, I wasn't over it. But I was starting to see the difference between a partner and a placeholder. Between love that lasts and love that performs. And for the first time since he left, I felt something close to power. Not because I was ready to move on, but because I was done blaming myself for a role I was set up to fail in. You know what the worst part of all of this is? It wasn't the lie. It wasn't Cabo. It wasn't even the new girl. It was realizing how deeply I abandoned myself to keep him comfortable. I bent every sharp edge of me so he wouldn't cut his hands. I softened truths, walked on eggshells, called silence patience, and labeled his avoidance as space. I excused red flags because I was afraid to be the one who gave up. But the truth is, I wasn't giving up. I was the only one actually fighting. He just showed up to the war without armor and blamed me for the arrows. And now that I've had time to really sit with it, no distractions, no texts to wait for, no false hope to nurture, I've learned something that no self-help book or therapist or quote on Pinterest could teach me. Real love doesn't ask you to erase yourself. It doesn't flinch when you bring your past to the table. It doesn't fold when things get heavy. It doesn't require disappearing acts or mental resets in the middle of wedding plans. Love doesn't need space to cheat. Love doesn't book flights to Cabo to process feelings. Love stays, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I used to think being chosen meant being flawless. Now I know being chosen means being seen fully. Mess, past, scars, and all. And still being wanted anyway. He didn't choose me. Not really. He chose the version of me that was convenient, manageable, lovable on his terms, but I'm not here to be someone's half-love. Someone's almost. Someone's soft landing until they find something easier. I want the kind of love that holds eye contact when things get hard, the kind that stays in the room, the kind that doesn't get scared when grief shows up unannounced. And I'm not going to apologize for wanting that. Not anymore. If that makes me too much, fine. Let me be too much for people who are too little. Because I'd rather be single for the next decade than shrink myself for one more man who thinks honesty is drama and emotional depth is a red flag. I won't beg for clarity from someone who communicated in breadcrumbs. I won't rewrite reality to make his exit make sense. And I won't accept silence as closure. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you decide. So this is mine. I'm closing the door, not because I hate him, but because I finally love me enough not to wait for someone who happily left that door swinging. Let him have his curated life, his new girl, his filtered happiness. Let him pretend like I was a lesson and she's the reward. But I know the truth. I was the real thing. I was the depth he couldn't swim in. And one day, maybe years from now, he'll see that. He'll hear my name, feel that twinge in his chest, and know he fumbled something real. But by then, I'll be long gone. Not bitter, not broken, just whole. Not because someone put me back together, but because I finally stopped handing my pieces to people who didn't know what to do with them. This is where the story ends for him. But for me, this is the beginning. And this time, I'm not shrinking to fit.